After Sir Tumbleweed encountered the mysterious grey-eyed witch, several important changes occurred. He stopped falling off his horse because it had run away. He discarded his armour so he was able to move about more easily, and he met a lion who was extremely respectful and who led him through the forest to the amazing sight now before his eyes. "A unicorn!" gasped Sir Tumbleweed, leaping up to his feet. And at the sound of his voice, the creature gave a snort, pawing the ground with his head lowered so that the sharp horn pointed directly at Sir Tumbleweed just like a lance. "A little horse and a little lance." Sir Tumbleweed's own words came back to him. Here was his chance to become the champion of the tournament, if only he could persuade it to carry him. Then the knight's newfound bravery quailed at the thought of that sharp horn sticking in his armourless body. He moved hastily behind the lion. "What shall we do, Arthur?" he muttered. "Flatter him," said the lion out of the corner of his mouth. "Everyone likes flattery, but when it comes to unicorns, you can lay it on with a trowel." Sir Tumbleweed cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he said, but did anyone ever tell you how beautiful you are?" The unicorn stopped pawing and snorting. "Of course," he said, "but I cannot be told often enough. You may say it again. You are very beautiful, with such grace, such elegance, and such an air of breeding. I could run rings round any of those great galumphing cart horses people like you ride," said the unicorn. I bet you could, but I don't suppose you could do it with me on your back." "You? A long, thin fellow like you? Of course I could carry you." Yes, but would you? Would you, rarest and most lovely of all animals, deign to carry an ordinary sort of chap like me?" "I might," said the unicorn, "if you continue to treat me with the proper respect. I am Spearhead, and don't expect me to call you master like that old flea bag. On the contrary, I should expect you to obey my orders. For a start, go and pull me a nice bunch of that sweet long grass on the far side of the glade. Go on." The lion waited until the knight was out of earshot, and then he said, "Nice work, Spearhead." "I didn't overdo it, did I?" asked the unicorn anxiously. "No," said Arthur. "It was just right. She'll be proud of you. Between us, we'll make a champion of him yet." So the three of them roamed the forest glades. All the time, Sir Tumbleweed had one thing in mind, to get news somehow of a tournament. The witch could have told him where to find one, no doubt, but he'd seen no sign of her since their first meeting. Then one day the news came. "Well, Spearhead," cried Sir Tumbleweed. "If you please, noblest of beasts," he added hastily. "What's up, master?" said Arthur. "That's up," said the knight, pointing to a large notice nailed on a wayside tree. "That's what I've been looking for all this time." Sir Tumbleweed read out the notice. "Oh, yes, Grandi Tournamenti, 1 week hence. Take notice that there is to be a Grandi Tournamenti of jousting at the Great D Medway by the river near to St. Ethelred's Bridge. Knights only need apply. He that unhorses every opponent shall be styled the champion of all England." "1 week hence?" said Arthur. "Hence from whence?" "We must hurry," said Sir Tumbleweed, and he jumped onto the unicorn's back once more. But Spearhead made no move. "Gee up!" shouted the knight. Spearhead stamped his elegant little foot. Oh, sorry," said Sir Tumbleweed. I wasn't thinking. If you please, beautiful Spearhead, gee up." And away they went. Ahead of them, the trees ended at the rim of a valley where there was a bend in the river, and within that bend, close to an old stone bridge, lay a large flat meadow covered with many brightly coloured tents and booths and thronged with people. They stopped at the edge of the forest overlooking the meadow. At that moment they heard the sound of a trumpet, and they saw the herald in the middle of the field. Hear ye, good people all," called the herald, and he introduced the first two knights. "Sir Thomas the Terrible and Sir Frederick the Frightful." The watchers in the wood saw them begin to move towards one another. Then above the yells of the crowd and the thunder of the hooves, Sir Tumbleweed and his friends could hear the almighty crash as the contestants met in the middle of the field and one dumped the other on the seat of his steel pants. Knight after knight trundled across the tilting field. Big beefy chaps they were, all of them with names like Sir Martin the Merciless, Sir Colin the Cruel, and Sir Herbert the Horrible, names to strike terror into the stoutest heart. Sir Tumbleweeds began to feel less stout by the minute. Whose stupid idea was this anyway, he thought. Can't have been mine, must have been the witch's. But I don't expect I'll ever see her again. If I just keep quiet a bit longer, the tournament will be over. It'll be too late for me to take part. At that moment, the trumpet rang out again, and the herald rode in, flanked by two very large knights on horses like elephants. "My lords, ladies and gentlemen," shouted the herald, "this is the final joust for the heavyweight championship of all England between the only two contestants as yet undefeated in today's tournament.
Introducing on my left, representing Northumbria and weighing in at 1 ton and 27 hundredths of weight, the moody, the masterful, the magnificent, Sir Dennis the Deadly. And on my right, representing Wessex and weighing in at 1 ton and 28 and 1/2 hundredths of weight, the fearsome, the furious, the fantabulous, Sir Basil the Beastly. He that first unhorses his opponent shall be declared the champion. To your corners, gentlemen, come out fighting and may the best knight win.
I fancy the piebald, said Spearhead.
I fancy the brown, said Arthur.
I don't fancy either, thought Sir Tumbleweed. Doesn't make much odds how many tons and hundreds of weight if it hits you smack on the button. He shut his eyes. When he opened them again, it was to see Sir Dennis flat on his back and Sir Basil galumphing triumphantly around the meadow on a lap of honour and bawling, "I am the champion!" Sir Tumbleweed gave a sigh of relief. "Oh, goody," he said. "It's over. We can go now, can't we?" Arthur didn't move, but Spearhead came immediately to stand ready beside the knight. "Of course," he said. "Jump on." But as soon as Sir Tumbleweed was mounted, the unicorn carried him out of the wood, straight down to the graty meadow and on to the tilting field. "Stop!" cried Sir Tumbleweed, tugging madly at the creamy mane of his steed, but to his horror they were at full speed, galloping straight towards the champion, and just when it seemed that they must crash straight into him, Spearhead slid to a dramatic halt. He reared up on his hind legs, with Sir Tumbleweed clinging desperately round his neck, flourishing his little forefeet in the very face of Sir Basil's charger, and gave a shrill neigh of defiance. The sound died away, and there was a moment of absolute silence around the tilting field. Then Sir Basil the Beastly found his voice. The new champion was not best pleased to be interrupted at his time of greatest glory. "Away with you, fellow!" he shouted. "Be gone!" Sir Tumbleweed didn't reply, for two simple reasons. One, he could think of nothing to say, and two, he very much wanted to be gone. He hauled urgently at the unicorn's mane, but Spearhead took no notice of him. "Are you deaf?" bawled Sir Basil, and the crowd began to laugh. To his great surprise, Sir Tumbleweed felt himself becoming angry. "No," he said, "I'm not, and there's no need to shout." At this, the crowd's laughter turned into a babble of excitement. Who was this man, rash enough to answer back to the champion? Why, Sir Basil would kill him for his impudence. "I'll kill you for your impudence," bellowed Sir Basil. "You common clown!" Among the crowd, unnoticed in the crush, was a figure dressed all in black, with a tall black hat upon its head and a long black cloak. A pair of grey eyes twinkled at Sir Tumbleweed's next words. "You mistake me," he said in a quiet voice that all could nonetheless hear. "I'm not a common clown. I am a knight." "A knight," said the champion. "You, a long, cold stream of pump water like you?" The crowd sniggered. "What's your name, then?" "Tumbleweed," said Sir Tumbleweed, and the crowd rocked with mirth. "Tumbleweed!" they cried to each other. "He be a weed, no mistake, and Sir Basil will soon tumble, he." Faced with the insults of the champion and the mockery of the onlookers, Sir Tumbleweed threw caution to the winds. He called out loudly and clearly, "And I challenge you!" He waited a few seconds while the crowd caught its breath, and then he added, "Fat face!" Sir Basil the Beastly fairly gobbled with rage. You challenge me?" he spluttered. "You are a fool!" "And you," said Sir Tumbleweed, "are a bigger one, so yah-boo and sucks to you." He put his thumbs in his ears and waggled his fingers and stuck his tongue out. A great roar went up from the crowd. Once inside the little tent, Sir Tumbleweed leaned forward and spoke into the ear of his steed. "I didn't overdo it, did I?" he asked anxiously. "No," said Spearhead. "You've got him so mad he can't see straight. He'll be a pushover." Outside there was a hubbub as the crowd discussed the extraordinary challenge. "Fancy him throwing down the gauntlet to Sir Basil." "He ain't got no gauntlet, has he, eh?" "And nothing but a little pony to ride." "With a spike on it," said this, see? "Never seen a horse like that afore." "Never seen a knight like that afore." "He got spirit, though, he bain't feared." And when the herald began his announcement and the challenger rode out of the tent to stand ready, there were many voices cheering on the underdog. "Good luck, sir," they cried. "Never worry, we'll give thee a decent burial." When at last the trumpet blew, the unicorn set off at full gallop. He covered the ground so speedily that Sir Basil and his charge had hardly begun to trundle when Spearhead was upon them. Sir Tumbleweed bent low on his neck so that the point of the champion's lance passed harmlessly over him. Nimble as a cat, the unicorn turned in his tracks and set off in pursuit of the ponderous pair. Down came his head, and into the big piebald bottom and the sharp little horn, up went the charger's heels in a great startled buck jump, and over his head sailed Sir Basil the Beastly to land with a noise like 70 steel saucepans falling on a flagstone floor. Spearhead slid to a halt beside the fallen champion, and Sir Tumbleweed stepped off, drawing his sword. He bent down and raised the visor of Sir Basil's helmet. "Say you're sorry," he said. "Shan't," said Sir Basil, struggling furiously, but vainly to get up. "All right," said Sir Tumbleweed. "You just watch this, then." He pulled Sir Basil's sword from its scabbard, and with one blow of his weapon, he cut it in half. Then he quartered his shield. Then he chopped his lance into 8 neat pieces. "Now then," he said pleasantly, "a nice big carcass like you could make 16 joints easily. What should we begin with? An arm, a leg, or would you prefer me to start with your head? Hmm?" No, gasped Sir Basil. I'm sorry. And I'm not a fool? No. Nor a common clown? No. What am I then? Said Sir Tumbleweed. Sir Basil the Beastly gulped. "You're a knight," he muttered. "And my name?" "Sir Tumbleweed." "And my title?" "The champion of all England," said Sir Basil in a strangled voice. Sir Tumbleweed sheathed his sword. "That's better," he said. He bent down once more to the helmet of the fallen knight. And now he said, "You can shut your face." And he closed the visor with a snap. Sir Tumbleweed's fame spread about the country like wildfire. As the story passed from one to another, so it grew. This red-haired giant of a knight, tall as a tree, had flown into the graty meadow on a winged white beast as swift as an arrow. He had tipped the mighty Sir Basil the Beastly off his charger with one prod of his finger, and then sliced him into small pieces. All this was very bad for Sir Tumbleweed. He would shout insults at any knight they chanced to meet, calling him rude names like Sir Big Bum. When the rider made off rather than face the fabled might of the champion, Sir Tumbleweed would jeer at him. "Cowdy, custard, wouldn't eat the mustard." It was plain to Arthur and Spearhead that the knight had grown much too big for his boots. "What he needs," said Spearhead, "is a short, sharp shock." "Like fighting for his life," said Arthur. "Without us to help him," said Spearhead. "Against something really terrifying," said Arthur. "A dragon, for example." "Yes, a simply huge fire-breathing one, with a long lashing tail, and terrible claws, and horrible teeth." "Right," said Spearhead. "That only leaves us one thing to do, then." "Yes," said Arthur. "We need to find a nice, fierce dragon." "That might be arranged," said a low, pleasant voice in the darkness of the windy night.